Before there was day, there was rhythm. The heart of the world beat slow, like the pulse of a sleeping giant. And in that heartbeat, a single spark drifted, Tonatiuh, the sun that remembered. Once, he burned so bright that even shadows bowed before him. The world bloomed beneath his warmth, and mortals sang his name with honeyed tongues. But gods who are worshipped too long begin to forget themselves. And Tonatiuh, weary of praise, began to fade. The sky dimmed, the fields cooled, and the sun withdrew into silence, hiding himself within a forgotten garden, a place where time grew tired of moving. The garden lay at the edge of memory. It was neither night nor day, neither life nor death, only stillness. Vines of silver light crawled along ancient stones, and flowers bloomed without scent, waiting for a warmth that never came. In the center of that garden stood Tonatiuh. His golden skin was dulled. His crown of flame no longer burned, only shimmered faintly, like embers at the end of a feast. He raised his hands to the pale sky. "Have they forgotten me?" he whispered, but no wind answered. The world he had once held in light did not remember the warmth of his gaze. And so he waited, a god exiled by his own silence. 1,000 seasons passed, though none could be counted. The stars above the garden hung still, caught in the threads of unmoving time. Tonatiuh knelt by a small pool of water. It was the only thing that still moved, rippling faintly, as if the universe had left one heartbeat behind. He saw his reflection and did not recognize it. His eyes were no longer gold, but gray. His face no longer a sun, but a fading echo. He touched the surface. "Who are you?" he asked. The reflection rippled, then spoke in the voice of water. "I am what remains when light forgets why it shines." The words struck him like a wound. He looked up at the dim sky, and for the first time he felt something unfamiliar, a god's version of fear. From the farthest corner of the garden came a sound, faint, like laughter carried on dust. A figure moved among the withered trees, its form glowing faintly blue. It was Xochitl, the spirit of lost flowers. "Still you linger, Tonatiuh," she said. Her voice was soft, woven from echoes. "This garden has waited too long for a dawn that never comes." Tonatiuh turned to her, his tone weary. "The world forgot my name. The mortals ceased their songs. What reason remains for light to rise?" Xochitl smiled sadly. "Do you not see, son of the fifth sky? They did not forget you. You forgot them. Light that does not fall upon faces, love that does not warm, both become ghosts." Her words lingered like the scent of rain. Then she turned, and her glow began to fade into the distance. "Find your way, Tonatiuh," she whispered. "The garden remembers, even when you do not." He watched her disappear. The silence that followed was no longer gentle. It was sharp, like regret. Tonatiuh walked the garden's edge, where petals of starlight fell upon cold soil. He touched the blossoms, and they flinched. Even beauty feared him now. He knelt beside a dying sunflower. Once, such flowers had turned their faces toward him with devotion. Now its head drooped low, heavy with dust. He knelt beside a dying sunflower. Once, such flowers had turned their faces toward him with devotion. Now its head drooped low, heavy with dust. He cupped the fragile stem and breathed upon it. A faint spark glowed, weak, trembling. It was not enough to make it bloom, but enough to remind him of warmth. And that small warmth, that memory, was all the garden needed. The pool shimmered again.
The reflection spoke once more. Will you rise, forgotten sun? The words struck him like a wound. He looked up at the dim sky, and for the first time he felt something unfamiliar, a god's version of fear. From the farthest corner of the garden came a sound, faint, like laughter carried on dust. A figure moved among the withered trees, its form glowing faintly blue. It was Xochitl, the spirit of lost flowers. Still you linger, Tonatiuh, she said. Her voice was soft, woven from echoes. This garden has waited too long for a dawn that never comes. Tonatiuh turned to her, his tone weary. The world forgot my name. The mortals ceased their songs. What reason remains for light to rise? Xochitl smiled sadly. Do you not see, son of the fifth sky? They did not forget you. You forgot them. Light that does not fall upon faces, love that does not warm, both become ghosts. Her words lingered like the scent of rain. Then she turned, and her glow began to fade into the distance. Find your way, Tonatiuh, she whispered. The garden remembers, even when you do not. He watched her disappear. The silence that followed was no longer gentle. It was sharp, like regret. Tonatiuh walked the garden's edge, where petals of starlight fell upon cold soil. He touched the blossoms, and they flinched. Even beauty feared him now. He knelt beside a dying sunflower. Once, such flowers had turned their faces toward him with devotion. Now its head drooped low, heavy with dust. He knelt beside a dying sunflower. Once, such flowers had turned their faces toward him with devotion. Now its head drooped low, heavy with dust. He cupped the fragile stem and breathed upon it. A faint spark glowed, weak, trembling. It was not enough to make it bloom, but enough to remind him of warmth. And that small warmth, that memory, was all the garden needed. The pool shimmered again. The reflection spoke once more. Will you rise, forgotten sun?
Tonatiuh closed his eyes. He could feel the pulse of the world beyond. Faint, desperate, yearning. The prayers of mortals, once thunder, now whispers lost in the dark. He placed his hand upon his chest. There, beneath the quiet, his heart still burned, hidden under ashes. He smiled faintly. If they have forgotten my light, then I shall rise not for praise, but for the song of the world itself. The sky above trembled. Clouds of silver began to stir. The garden shivered with the promise of dawn. But before the light could bloom, a shadow fell. From beneath the roots of the world, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, and silent. It was Tonatiuh, Lord of the underworld. Stay your hand, son, he said, his voice like stones grinding. The night has ruled long enough to forget you. If you rise, you will tear open the balance that even death obeys. Tonatiuh met his gaze calmly. Then let the balance tremble. The world was never meant to live without warmth. The god of death smiled, a hollow, echoing thing. Then burn if you must, but remember, every dawn births its own dusk. And with that, he vanished into the soil, leaving only silence in his wake. The garden waited. Tonatiuh stood in the center once more, surrounded by flowers that glowed faintly under his presence. He looked to the pool. His reflection was no longer gray, but bronze. He took a breath and raised his arms. The air thickened with gold. The vines trembled, and one by one, the flowers turned toward him again. Light bloomed, gentle, hesitant, like a memory reborn. And for the first time in an eternity, the garden of the forgotten sun began to breathe.
The garden was no longer still. Soft tremors pulsed through the soil like dreams waking from long sleep. Tonatiuh stood at the center, his eyes reflecting the first breath of gold. Yet the light was fragile, hesitant, like a candle trembling in the hollow of forgotten prayer. He felt it deep within him, warmth without certainty, fire without purpose. "Will this light save me?" he murmured. The pool answered only with ripples, as if memory itself was afraid to speak. He raised his hand, and from his palm flickered a small flame. It was weak yet alive, and it sang. The song was not of triumph, but of longing. Each note carried memories of laughter, of tears, of fields that once shimmered beneath his gaze. Every melody returned to him what he had given to the world. But woven through that song was another sound, faint, cold, like the voice of stone. It whispered from beneath the roots, "Fire remembers pain as well as warmth." Tonatiuh turned toward the sound. The ground cracked, and smoke rose like sighs from the underworld. From the mist stepped Tezcatlipoca, the mirror of night. He was the reflection of everything Tonatiuh was not, still, shadowed, knowing. "Ah," said Tezcatlipoca, his smile a slash of silver in the dark. "The sun stirs again. Tell me, Tonatiuh, do you rise to bring warmth, or to be seen?" Tonatiuh frowned. "I rise because I must. The world shivers in my silence." "Perhaps," said the god of night, "or perhaps the world learned to glow without you." He gestured, and the garden darkened again. In that dimness the flowers shimmered faintly, glowing not by sunlight, but by memory. "You see, even in your absence the world found its own fire. Do you call that salvation, or betrayal?" Tonatiuh lowered his gaze. "I call it balance."
The mirror god laughed, the sound deep and broken. "Balance? You are the sun, Tonatiuh. You were born to burn, not to share the flame." The words echoed across the garden, and the small flame in Tonatiuh's hand flickered with anger. "Then you do not understand," said the sun. "To burn for oneself is vanity. To burn for others is truth." The flame grew brighter, just enough to touch Tezcatlipoca's reflection. The night god flinched, his silver mask cracking slightly under the heat. For the first time, the shadows around Tonatiuh began to retreat. But the light did not stop there. It surged through the vines, spilling into the air in waves of color. The silver flowers that once waited for warmth now opened, their petals trembling under the weight of gold. The garden glowed again, not with day, but with awakening. Tezcatlipoca's eyes narrowed. "Careful, brother. Fire that forgets itself consumes what it loves." Tonatiuh stepped forward. "Then let it consume me first, before the world grows cold again." He pressed his hands together, and between his palms, the small flame burst into a spiral of light. The light was not fire, it was memory. It carried visions of the world as it once was. Children playing beneath the dawn, fields of maize swaying to the rhythm of wind, and temples where prayers rose like smoke to greet him. Each image flared within him, and each one fed his heart with something older than worship, meaning. The flame did not burn him, it became him, and in that moment, Tonatiuh remembered what gods so often forget, that their light is not theirs to keep. Tezcatlipoca watched silently. The shadow that had lingered in his eyes softened, almost mournful. "Perhaps you are not as proud as the others," he said. "But remember, every dawn must pay its debt tonight. When your light grows too strong, I will come again, and the sky will choose who it belongs to. Tonatiuh nodded.
So be it. Let the sky decide, as long as the world still breathes. The mirror god smiled once more and vanished into smoke. The garden glowed brighter now. Tonatiuh knelt before the pool again. His reflection shimmered gold, not blinding, not divine, but human. For the first time, he saw in himself not power, but purpose. He dipped his hand into the water. Where his fingers touched, ripples of light spread outward, and from each ripple, the sound of laughter echoed, the laughter of mortals waking to the warmth of morning. He smiled. The world remembers, he whispered. High above, clouds began to part. A faint golden hue bled into the horizon. The first dawn in an age trembled on the edge of existence. The gods watched from afar, silent and still. Even Mictlantecuhtli in his dark halls felt the warmth brush the edges of his realm. The dead stirred, remembering the comfort of light. The sun was not yet born, but its promise filled the world with breath. Tonatiuh stood, fire shimmering behind his eyes. He looked toward the heavens, where the garden's light had begun to open a path, a staircase woven from flame and silence. Then let the dawn begin, he said, and as he rose, the garden of the forgotten sun became its heart once more, alive, luminous, and waiting for the day to return.
Tonatiuh rose from the garden, wrapped in gold and silence. The light that followed him was gentle. Not yet day, not yet flame, a whisper of what once was eternal. He looked below. The garden shimmered faintly, breathing again. Each flower turned upward. Each pool reflected warmth instead of shadow. But beyond its walls stretched a world that still slept in gray. He raised his hand toward the heavens. The sky did not open. It waited, watching. And then, from deep within that vastness, a voice thundered. You have returned without permission. The clouds swirled, forming a colossal shape, a face carved from storm and memory. It was Tlaloc, Lord of Rain. His eyes were rivers, his breath a storm. I kept the world alive when you vanished, Tlaloc said. My tears became their sun, my storms their hope. Why do you come now to steal what peace remains? Tonatiuh bowed his head slightly. I did not come to steal. I came to remember. Tlaloc's thunderous laughter shook the air. Remember? Your memory is flame. It burns whatever it touches. The winds churned. The clouds thickened. The trial of light had begun. Lightning fell upon the garden, but the bolts turned to gold before they struck. Tonatiuh lifted his hand and caught one. Its electricity flared in his palm, shimmering like liquid light. He looked at Tlaloc and spoke softly. Do you not see? Rain and sun are not enemies. You weep so that life may drink. I burn so that it may grow. Tlaloc's voice broke like thunder through stone. Then prove it. Prove that your light can warm without consuming. The sky split open. The stars trembled, and the world turned its gaze toward the heavens. The challenge was simple, to shine again, without destroying what had learned to live in his absence. Tonatiuh took a deep breath. Within him, the fire trembled. The echo of ancient sacrifice, the memory of hearts once offered in his name.
He remembered their faces, mortals who bled so that the sun might rise. He had never asked for their lives, yet their devotion had chained him to eternity. Now, for the first time, he sought a new kind of offering, to rise not through blood, but through forgiveness. He opened his palms to the heavens. The light that flowed from him was warm, quiet, endless. The clouds burned gold. The storm stilled. The air filled with a sound like singing. 1,000 invisible voices breathing in unison. It was the earth itself awakening. The mountains glowed at their peaks. The rivers mirrored light instead of sky. The forests whispered his name, not in worship, but in recognition. Tlaloc gazed upon the changing world. The rain upon his skin turned to mist. "Your fire does not consume," he said quietly. "It remembers." But the trial was not yet over. From behind the sun's glow, another voice echoed, deeper, older. "Then let him be tested by shadow." The light dimmed. The sky darkened again. And from the void beyond stars, a figure emerged cloaked in endless night. Metzli, the moon goddess. "Brother of day," she said softly. "You have woken too soon. The world no longer belongs to one light alone." Her silver gaze was calm, but cold. "When you fell, I rose. Now, balance demands that you learn to share the sky." Tonatiuh looked upon her and saw his reflection. Not fire, but gentleness. He bowed. "Then let our lights meet without fear." Metzli raised her hand. Between them, the sky split into halves, one golden, one silver. But where they touched, the light wavered, as if the world itself held its breath. She smiled faintly. "Can you love a world that also belongs to shadow?" The question struck deeper than any thunder. He closed his eyes. "Yes," he said at last, "because without shadow, no one remembers what light means."
The moonlight folded into the sunlight, and for the first time in ages the sky became whole. Not day or night, but a harmony of both. The world below sighed, as though all things living had waited lifetimes for that sound. Tlaloc bowed his head. Metzli smiled, and her silver crown dimmed gently in respect. Tonatiuh stood radiant, not blazing, but balanced. The trial had ended. He turned his gaze toward the horizon. The world still trembled beneath centuries of sleep. He felt it, the longing, the silence, the unfinished dawn. "The garden still calls," he whispered. "I am not yet the sun they need, only the fire that remembers them." He descended once more, his footsteps scattering petals of gold that glowed in his wake. Behind him, the sky wept with light. That night, mortals awoke to something they did not understand. A golden shimmer danced upon the horizon, and for the first time in 1,000 generations, they saw both the sun and the moon sharing the same sky. They did not speak. They simply watched, and though they did not know his name, their hearts whispered a prayer older than language, a promise to remember warmth when morning came. Far above, Tonatiuh smiled. The world was learning again to love its light. The world glowed with fragile dawn. The sky, for the first time in ages, carried both gold and silver. Sun and moon sharing the breath of creation. Below, rivers sang softly. The garden shimmered like a sleeping god's dream. But above, where stars drifted in silence, something stirred, a pulse older than the gods themselves. Tonatiuh felt it before he saw it, the heart of the sky beating once again. It was not his alone. It belonged to everything that ever lived, and everything that ever longed to rise. He ascended higher, beyond the reach of wind, where time itself forgot how to move. There, the light thinned into pure song, and the song called his name, Tonatiuh.
The sound was neither voice nor echo, but the resonance of existence remembering its own origin. He followed it, drawn through spirals of light, until he reached the vast horizon where the world's breath met eternity. There, suspended in radiant stillness, he found a single flame the size of a heart, pulsing, steady, alive. The flame spoke without words. It showed him visions not of power, but of consequence. He saw the mortals below, their laughter under faint light, their hands clasped in prayer not of fear but gratitude. He saw their faces painted in ash and gold, singing songs that rose like warmth into his very chest. But then he saw the truth he had forgotten. For every dawn he brought, a dusk followed. For every life that bloomed, another faded into shadow. The heart of the sky pulsed again, and he understood. Even light must learn how to die, so that the world may live. A voice rose from within the flame, gentle, infinite. You were not made to rule, Tonatiuh. You were made to remember. He knelt before the burning heart, his reflection flickering in its golden glow. I thought light was enough, he whispered. I thought warmth would heal what darkness had broken. The voice answered, warmth heals, but fire also humbles. You have burned the sky, and now you must learn to share it. Tears fell from his eyes, turning into sparks that drifted into the void. From behind him, the air shimmered, and a figure emerged, glowing faintly red. It was Tonatiuh, Lord of the Sacred Flame. He carried within him the fire of creation, older even than Tonatiuh's dawn. Brother, said Tonatiuh, his tone both kind and severe, you have remembered the warmth. Now remember the cost. He opened his hand, revealing embers that never died. They are yours, but each one burns with the heart of a mortal. Every spark of faith, every whisper of prayer. You are their reflection, not their master. Tonatiuh took the embers in silence. They glowed in his palm like small hearts beating together. Suddenly, the sky trembled. A roar spread through the heavens. Low, endless, terrifying. The constellations began to twist. The void itself seemed to swallow light. Tonatiuh turned sharply. They are coming. Who? Asked Tonatiuh. The forgotten ones, the fire god said grimly. The remnants of suns that fell before you. They envy your warmth. They will devour it if you do not stand. And then, the horizon tore open. From the wound in the sky poured shadows shaped like flames. Black suns burning backward, feeding on light instead of giving it. Their eyes glowed white, hollow, endless. Tonatiuh spread his arms, his fire rising in waves. But for every ray of light he cast, they absorbed it, turning brightness into hunger. Tonatiuh's voice roared through the wind. Do not fight them with power. Fight them with memory. Tonatiuh closed his eyes. He thought of the garden. He thought of the mortals who danced in the light. He thought of warmth shared, not worshipped. And from his chest, the true light began to rise. Not fire, not flame, but remembrance. The shadows screamed. The sky blazed gold. Every heartbeat of the world joined in rhythm, from rivers to stars, from mortals to gods. The forgotten suns dissolved into smoke, their ashes forming new stars in the sky. Tonatiuh smiled faintly. You have done it. You have turned destruction into creation. Tonatiuh lowered his gaze. The fire remembers, but it also forgives. The elder god nodded. That is why you are still the heart of the fifth sky. The storm quieted. The heart of the sky glowed steady again. Not burning, but breathing. Tonatiuh placed the embers upon it, and they sank into the golden core, becoming part of its eternal rhythm. He looked around, and saw every god's light reflected. Moon, rain, fire, life, all sharing the same endless dawn. He whispered, then let my heart beat with theirs. When Tonatiuh descended once more, the world felt different. The air shimmered with gentle warmth, and every shadow carried a trace of light. The mortals who looked to the sky saw not just the sun, but the memory of everything that had come before it. Love, loss, silence, and flame. And in that golden calm, the goddess of night whispered from afar, Now you are no longer forgotten, Tonatiuh. You are remembered in every dawn. He closed his eyes and smiled, his reflection shining softly in the heart of the sky. The world breathed again. From mountain to sea, from forest to desert, the rhythm of life had returned. But though light now touched every corner, Tonatiuh could feel the silence beneath it, a stillness that whispered of unfinished destiny. He stood at the edge of the horizon, where dawn and dusk kissed in eternal motion. The garden below him shimmered with gold and emerald hues, its flowers blooming as if time itself had begun anew. And yet, in the deepest soil, something stirred, something ancient, something waiting. He descended once more into the garden. It no longer wept. It sang softly with every breeze, each leaf whispering stories of rebirth. At the center, the pool of reflection gleamed like liquid sunlight. When Tonatiuh approached, his image did not appear as before. Instead, he saw countless faces. Mortals, gods, beasts, stars, each one carrying a fragment of his light. "They are pieces of you," a voice said. He turned and found Xochitl, the spirit of lost flowers, her glow gentler now, woven with dawn's color. "You gave yourself to them," she said, smiling faintly. "Now they bloom with what you shared." Tonatiuh knelt before the pool. "So the flame is no longer mine?" "No," she whispered. "It never was." The wind shifted. A shadow passed over the garden. Not dark, but cool, soft, and silver. Metzli, the moon goddess, appeared beside the pool, her eyes shimmering like water touched by stars. "The balance holds," she said, "but only just. For every dawn you give, I must cradle the rest." Tonatiuh smiled. "Then we walk together now, fire and reflection." Her gaze lingered on his light. "For now, yes, but remember, even balance fades if one forgets its purpose." She extended her hand, and a single silver petal fell from her palm into the pool. The water glowed with moonlight, joining the gold. "Let the sky never again choose one over the other," she whispered, and then she was gone. As her light faded, Tonatiuh looked upward. The heavens shimmered with quiet harmony, gold and silver threads woven through the blue. But far beyond, something faint pulsed, a rhythm weak and hollow. He felt it in his chest. "The heart of the world," he murmured. "It still remembers the wound." He closed his eyes and reached into the earth with his light. He saw beneath mountains, through rivers, through sleeping roots. There, deep within the underworld, the shadows of the forgotten ones still stirred, fragments of broken suns, flickering in the dark. They did not rage this time. They whispered, "Let us burn again." Tonatiuh hesitated. Their voices carried sorrow, not hunger. He remembered the battle, how their destruction became new stars. Perhaps even they deserved to shine once more. He knelt beside the pool and pressed his hand into the water. The surface rippled, opening like a window to the void. Through it, he saw the ashes of the fallen suns swirling in space, cold, weightless, forgotten. He breathed, and the golden warmth within him pulsed outward. "Rise," he whispered, "not as gods, but as light for all." And the ashes stirred, tiny embers rekindling, forming constellations of quiet fire. The night sky above answered, blazing with 1,000 newborn stars. The garden glowed brighter than ever. Rivers shimmered with gold and silver veins. The trees swayed in rhythm with the pulse of the heavens. Tonatiuh stood in the center, and for the first time since creation, he felt the world's light not as his burden, but as his reflection. The pool no longer showed his face. Instead, it showed the entire sky, a living tapestry of warmth, memory, and peace. "This," he said softly, "is what the sun was always meant to be." From the horizon came the sound of footsteps, slow, deep, and echoing like thunder beneath the ground. It was Mictlantecutli, lord of the underworld, emerging once more. His cloak of shadows trailed with starlight. "You have done what none before you dared," he said. "You gave fire to the void, and it sang instead of screamed. Tonatiuh bowed his head. The world no longer needs to fear the dark. It only needs to remember it. Mictlantecuhtli's hollow eyes glimmered faintly. Then perhaps even death can dream again. And with that he vanished into mist. The world quieted. The last echoes of shadow and light blended together. A breath, a song, a silence that was not empty but full. The flowers of the garden began to close, not in sorrow but in rest. Their petals shimmered with sunlight, holding it within like memory. Tonatiuh looked up. The dawn was waiting, patient, radiant, infinite. He spread his arms. Then let the day begin. From the heart of the sky, the first true sun in an age ignited. Its rays reached oceans, mountains, cities, and dreams. Children awoke to its warmth. Elders wept at its beauty. And the world, for a single breath, remembered why it was alive. The mortals lifted their faces to the light. Not one prayed. They simply smiled. Far above, Tonatiuh floated in the sea of dawn. He no longer burned alone, for in every soul, in every whisper, his fire now lived. He whispered into the wind, "May every shadow find its light, and every light remember its shadow." And with that, the sun rose completely, a golden eye opening upon a world that had finally learned to love it back.
The world no longer trembled in shadow. Rivers gleamed like veins of light, and the mountains wore golden crowns woven from dawn. The sky itself seemed alive, not with power, but with peace. Tonatiuh stood above it all, his body now translucent, woven from flame and memory. He could feel the pulse of every living thing, as if their hearts beat together with his. He whispered into the quiet, "This is the world reborn. This is the light that remembers its name." He drifted downward, back toward the garden. It welcomed him not as a god but as its child. The air was soft, carrying the scent of new blossoms. The pool of reflection shimmered, golden and calm. When he looked into it, he did not see himself. Instead, he saw the sky filled with suns, small, bright human hearts. Every one of them carried his warmth, but none of them needed him to shine. A smile crossed his face. "The light is no longer mine," he murmured. "It belongs to the world now." The voice of Xochitl, the spirit of lost flowers, rose gently from the garden's edge. "You have given them what even gods forget to give, freedom." She stepped into the light, her once faded glow now blooming with all the colors of morning. "The garden no longer waits for you, Tonatiuh. It remembers you instead." He bowed his head. "And what becomes of me?" Her eyes softened. "You return to what you've always been, a heartbeat between worlds." From the horizon came silver light. Metzli, the moon goddess, descending in silence. Her presence cooled the air, and her silver crown shimmered beside his golden flame. "For the first time," she said softly, "the night will not fear the day." She extended her hand, and he took it. Their lights touched, gold and silver weaving together into a single gentle radiance. "Then," Tonatiuh said, "let us rise together."
As their hands joined, the sky above them split into colors unseen, the pure hues of creation's first breath. Every god looked up from their realm, Tlaloc from his storms, Xiaotacuhtli from his sacred fire, Mictlantecuhtli from the stillness of his underworld. All watched as the two lights, sun and moon, fire and reflection, merged into harmony. The heavens sang. not with words but with understanding. Then came silence, the kind that follows truth. The garden of the forgotten sun began to dissolve, its vines of silver and gold unraveling into light. Petal by petal, leaf by leaf, it rose toward the sky, until nothing remained but the pool of reflection. Tonatiuh knelt beside it one last time. His reflection smiled back. Not a god, but a memory of warmth. He placed his hand upon the surface and whispered, "Sleep now, my garden. Your light is everywhere." The water rippled once and then turned into sky. High above the earth, the first true dawn spread its wings. The horizon burned softly, not in fire but in color, a living song that could never again fade. Mortals awoke beneath it, their faces kissed by the gentlest sunlight. They felt warmth, yes, but also peace, as if they too remembered something ancient. They did not know his name, but they whispered a word older than prayer. "Thank you." In that moment, Tonatiuh's light began to fade, not vanish, but transform. His fire flowed into the air, the rivers, the trees, the hearts of all who breathed. Xochitla's voice carried on the wind. "You are no longer the son of the fifth sky. You are no longer the son of the fifth sky. You are the warmth in every dawn." Metzli bowed her head in farewell, her silver tears falling into the heavens as stars. And where he had stood, a single golden blossom bloomed, its petals glowing faintly, forever.
Ages passed. Empires rose and fell beneath the endless dance of day and night. Songs were sung, temples built, names forgotten. But every morning, as sunlight broke through the clouds, a golden hue lingered just a moment too long, as if remembering someone. Some said it was a god. Others said it was only the light. But the old ones knew. It was Tonatiuh, smiling through the sky, watching the world he had taught to love the dawn. And so it was that the forgotten sun became the eternal one, not a king above creation, but its heartbeat. When children laughed in the light, when lovers found warmth beneath the stars, when fire was shared instead of feared, that was his temple. The gods no longer spoke his name, for they no longer needed to. The world itself had become his hymn, and in that hymn, sung softly across eternity, a single voice whispered through every sunrise, "I am light, and I remember."